Welcome back to the Tiga Tactics podcast, show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident MANs, martial arts nerd, include co-founder of Tiga Tactics and holder of black belt in 9 different styles, Dr. Conrad Bui.
Hey, hello, everybody.
We also have black belt holder in 4 different styles, the other co-founder, Patrick Vuong.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome.
And I am your third co-host, retired Army Special Forces soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete, Evan Ultra-OCR man Perperis. Today, we're going to be talking about the Combatives Blueprint book, but before we get to that, a quick word about Vulpes training products. Conrad, I know you just recently got some Vulpes. Why don't you tell me about something you got?
Yeah, I got the Golok. It's a machete-sized blade training tool that originated from Indonesia, and it's basically a short sword kind of thing, and can't wait to use it. It's got good balance. I like the handle. And again, like I mentioned last time, what just jumped out at me right away when I held it was quality. And so, hey, I'm looking forward to making a video with it, maybe flow with it a little bit because it's well balanced. It's well made. And so if anyone has interest in getting training weapons or tools, check them out because they have almost everything. I mean, everything from Dungeons and Dragons styles to a kitchen knife as well too. So check them out.
Yeah, they've got so much products. They've got like over 300. It's absolutely insane, including that ridiculous Star Trek Klingon weapon from like I don't know if it's Next Generation or the original series, but it's ridiculous looking. So check them out. They're all hard plastic, very well made, and they're not too light. They're not too heavy. Seems just about right. So we'll drop a link down in the show notes down below. All right, today we're going to be talking about the Combatives Blueprint, which is my newest book. I just released it last month as of this recording. So it's basically a deep dive into a bunch of like martial arts lessons learned and kind of the book I wish I had when I started my martial arts journey to kind of give me kind of a once-over of the fighting world and kind of some of the truths at different ranges of combat. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to Patrick for a little bit to kind of start the discussion going, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, congratulations. I know, as a writer myself, I know how difficult it is to write. I like to say that it's bleeding from the brain onto a blank page, and so to finish it is a huge accomplishment. So congratulations on that. I guess we should start with like what made you want to write a Combatives Blueprint?
It was so actually, when I started training martial arts, I wanted to do like the Greek martial arts because I'm like ethnically Greek, so it seemed logically appropriate. Which is pankration, right? It was basically like the old version of MMA. And when I started researching it more, I found out there's like essentially their warriors, like the Spartan warriors, would use pamakon, right? Like it's essentially old combatives. That's like it has weapons, but then there's also strikes and kind of grappling. It's everything, right? It's the term we use, combatives, just an older term. And those things like some people have like tried to recreate them. And I've trained with a couple of guys, Jake Culver in the Missouri, who has like recreated some of the pankration stuff. But it's really, there's no like written historical records of any of this stuff. The written historical record is just like the list of champions, and then like occasionally there's a couple of fights that are described, but there's no like, here's a manual, here's how to do these different moves, and here's what it is. Like a lot of the stuff we know about ancient Greek fighting is based off of pottery and essentially statues and stuff like that. So that was kind of like, it was kind of like the initial desire to learn that stuff. And then as I started going through, I remembered when I wrote my book on obstacle course racing, like I didn't feel like I was an expert when I started writing the book, but you have to do so much studying and like analyzing and figuring out why, that by the end of the process, you're like, I learned so much. So like, it's partly a selfish endeavor because I feel like you become so much more proficient when you have to take your thoughts, lay them out, and explain logically why you do X over Z. So that's kind of where it started. And I've written a bunch of books on obstacle course racing, and I make a little money, not a lot doing it. So partly for selfish reasons, partly to kind of capture a bunch of lessons learned, partly to kind of just spread the love of some of the things I learned, and have a resource that I could give someone else who maybe would be in a similar position that was like, tell me about like the martial arts world. So
Very
that's kind of where it came from.
And how, just a broad overview of, can you give people an idea of what they can expect from a book if they were to read it?
Yeah, so essentially, you get a little bit of Greek history, but I'd say very briefly. Like if you're looking for what ancient Pankration and ancient Pamukon like looked like, you're not getting that. I essentially, like hypothetically, if it was allowed to continue, what would it look like today? And basically, I broke down the book into ranges of combat. So I divided into 8 sections. It starts off talking about mindset, obviously. I take a lot of like inspiration from the stuff Tiga Tactics does. So there's a chapter on mindset. There's a chapter on fitness. There's a chapter on nutrition. And then we get into the 8 ranges of combat. So support, which is basically like multiple people using one weapon system. So like for the military world, I consider weapon systems like a spotter sniper on a single rifle. I consider that support range, as well as like artillery and call for fire and close air support. And I don't actually teach that stuff in the book, but I pull lessons learned from it that apply to civilian self-defense. So the support chapter is kind of weird, but then all the other chapters are very applicable and more skill focused, right? So I talk about concealed carry and how people carry in the projectile range, and drawing your weapon, and methods to learn that stuff. In the striking weapons range, I talk a lot about blade work. So if you've taken like Tiga's EDC knife course, you'll like a lot of the stuff in there. I use some inspiration from that, but then I also kind of pull from some other sources from the other knife systems I studied. And then the next range is basically long range, which is kicking, and then mid-range punching, close range, which is essentially trapping, as well as knees and elbows, then standing grappling, and then ground grappling. The striking ranges, there's a little more like specifics, giving like tips for various strikes and kind of why do one over the other. And then for the ground grappling and the standing grappling, it's just not, I don't think you can learn very well from a book. So I kind of used a lot more principle based than like specific movement based. So there's not a lot of like technical pictures in the book. It's a lot more concept based. And it's about 300 pages. So it's just, every chapter is just like a wealth of information. And I think whatever your style is, you'll be like, oh yeah, the chapter on my style, or like the range I normally train in makes sense, but like maybe I didn't learn a whole lot, but I guarantee you'll learn a lot from the other sections that are not like your specific martial arts emphasis.
I see. So, when we're talking about combatives, that's to me real world violence, basically. But you just mentioned some martial arts, some specific styles. So is this all encompassing? Does it have traditional martial arts, modern martial art, like mixed martial arts, combat sports, and then also, real life, reality based self defense?
Yeah. So I basically took what I was looking for in martial arts and kind of like expanded it into like a concept. And basically for each of those ranges, I tend to put like, all right, if you don't have time if you only have a weekend to train, here's what you do, right? So that it gives you like beginner level, like a goal to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have a year, like here's a better goal that's going to still give you the like more training you need. And then if you have multiple years, here's another goal. And then if you have 5+ years, here's another goal, right? So it kind of like, the goal is someone reading the book looks at the different ranges and is like, well, at least let me get to beginner at all these levels, because that's going to put me above 90% of the world's population in fighting, right? Just from like a little bit of training. So that, like we've talked about before, the pure combatives focus, you don't need that many moves, you don't need that much skills.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is with that, then people get bored and they stop training.
Right.
So the goal is to like, here's the skills you actually need, but here's a path forward if you want to continue to refine those skills and be able to form kind of those basic skills like at the level of more of a master. So
that's very cool, and that's what I love talking to you. I love training with you because you do have a background in special operation forces, and every person I know who's an operator, they always bring a different perspective to whether it's combat, it could be like mechanics, it could be like science. You always bring something different because you're basically trained to think differently than everybody else. I mean, that's why you're asymmetrical warfare, right? And in a typical martial arts book, it's like they will write the book the way that they kind of learn the art. So they'll go white belt, blue, yellow belt, orange belt, blah 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 blah. It's very uh, what's the word? Predictable. But I like the way that you approach things because you're giving people tools so that they can learn to elevate their game, so to speak. And so the book is structured in a different way that I would expect. Conrad,
Yeah.
you're involved in this book as well. What did you think of it? And do you have any questions for Evan?
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a very good overview of just a survey of martial arts as far as the martial goes. It's a terrific survey. If you're looking to be an effective person in competition or on the street, this is a terrific book to have. Like we talked about, and even Evan mentioned, there's not a lot of pictures. There's not a lot of techniques. There's plenty of books out there if you're looking for how to throw a punch, how to throw a kick, or combos, or how to set things up, or whether you're looking at trapping range, kicking range, punching range, grappling range. There's plenty of books for that. I just like how Evan ties everything together, gives us a broad overview of everything. And if somebody's training a certain martial art, every art has holes in it. And this can help fill those holes for especially traditional martial artists and even people who are just generally into self-defense. Yeah, definitely. Like what Evan said, the support range. Yeah, that's way above my pay grade. So I thought it's cool though. I mean, it's something to consider as well too. But and something that I learned a lot from. There's also some very how would you say controversial topics as well towards the end of the book. You want to talk about those controversial topics, Evan?
Yeah, so the last couple of chapters, the ones I haven't mentioned yet. So I do a chapter on like chi blast, like no touch knockout, iron body, and the death touch, dim mak, right? Because when I started in martial arts, you hear about these things and you're like, what is that? Is that real? Like, so I kind of like did some research on those as well, just to figure out like why is there hype surrounding it? And then I have an undergrad degree in psychology. And I was like, well, what's some of like the underlying psychological reasons that people think this is true, or maybe like how it gains traction? So I talk a little bit about that and where I think because I think every conspiracy and every like tall tale, I think there's like nuggets of truth in there. It's just they've been blown out of proportion most of the time. So that's one of the last chapters. And then one of the other chapters, I talk about essentially spirituality and the like I've updated everything for modern times, and because I'm Orthodox Christian, and I think that is the truth. You get a little bit of like Christian flair in there, and it's specifically because I think if you're going to teach people how to hurt other people, you should temper it with peacefulness, kindness, like we've talked about in a bunch of our other previous episodes. So I use Christianity as the mechanism to kind of relay some of that, and that's not that long. It's it's not like 2 pages, but it's I don't know, was it 15 pages maybe towards the end of the book, and just kind of if we want to do the yin yang type thing, it's kind of balancing out you as a person. So
right, yeah, back to the chi blast and stuff. We're gonna end up on McDojo Life. Because no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
we're not ending up on McDojo Life, but I really appreciate your spirituality section. I learned a lot from it. Christianity isn't part of my background growing up, but I love Christianity. I love what it stands for, and I got a lot out of it. And like when I saw that there was spirituality in your book, I thought, what the heck? I was told not to talk about sex, politics, and religion, but man, you threw in the religion part, and I loved it.
So the spirituality section comes right after the chapter on like where I'm like debunking chi blast and dim mak and some of the other stuff. And I actually made sure to compare like why I think Christianity is true, but I don't think any of this stuff is true. Even though, you know, you can look at some of the history of Christianity and say like, well, there's fantastical claims in there. So what, how do I know that's just not another dim mak or a chi blast type thing? So I explore that as well.
Very
Very
cool.
cool. I mean, that about, I'm not sure, you know, if there's any more that you could have researched into this book to round it out so well. So kudos to you. Well done.
Thank you. You know, and I called it I went through several name changes for the titles, and I ultimately settled on Blueprint because in the beginning of the book, I use a house comparison, right? Like I say, like everyone's building a martial arts house, you know, and some people want a giant living room, and some people want a tiny bathroom, and they want a big garage. But like your house should still have all these like basic components. Um, and I compare that to like what the book is. You're building this martial arts house, and yes, you can have the nicest garage. Maybe that's your projectile range, and maybe your grappling range is like a unfinished bathroom. But like you still need a bathroom. Like you still need that stuff. So that's the way I kind of compare it. That you know everyone's going to have like different size rooms or different size expertise in their different range of combat, but you still need a little bit in each of those ranges to kind of make you a you know a full martial artist, not a partial artist, as some people like to say.
I like that.
Those are great analogies.
You know, you said at the beginning that you needed to do research for your books that you write, and also part of that research helps you grow. So, what as a two-part question? So, what kind of research did you do for this book, and what did you learn? How did you grow from writing this book?
So it's largely just, I mean, just training. I mean, I took a lot of inspiration from you and Patrick. You know, the number of styles you guys study and look at is just it's just astounding. And I love that you had explored all these different styles. So you know, obviously I was training karate at one point. I was training, you know, Jeet Kune Do. I was training Kali, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And then a bunch of different knife systems. I was Army Combatives. So it was basically my normal martial arts training, but I made sure to go a little bit deeper, and I made sure instead of when someone told me to like block this way or punch this way, instead of just being like, got it, I will block that way, I will punch this way, I would ask, well, you know, why do you do that? And then when I would see someone punch a different way, like Wing Chun, I'd be like, well, why are they punching different? It's not, it can't be because they're idiots, right? There's got to be a reason that different styles are using different techniques, right? It's not, they're not just stupid, right? One style is not stupider than the other. You know, they're a lot of times they're countering a specific threat for that time period or that specific environment. You know, your tactics for you know fighting in a city are not going to be the same as your tactics for fighting in the jungle, which won't be the same as tactics for fighting in the Arctic, right? So it's similarly martial arts, depending on this what kind of city you live in. You may be in a tighter space, so you may have to throw smaller punches. If you're worried about breaking your hands, you may not be throwing these like you know giant right crosses. So maybe the vertical fist, which can slip between someone's guard, is a better option. So I kind of just researched that and looked at why, and then I just listened to a ton of podcasts, like an obscene amount of podcasts. Between what are the different? I can't even remember all the different brands. There's about like usually when I find a show I think is pretty good, I will listen to the entire series. Like oh well, 200 episodes, yeah, I'll go through that.
Whoa.
You know, but between driving to work and running, I spend a lot of time listening to audiobooks and podcasts. So I got to listen to a lot of other martial artists I think are smart and hear their take on things and kind of compare and contrast. And you see a lot of overlap, but then you see some, you know, differing opinions. And, you know, again, from talking to you guys, all the conversations we've had, both online, offline, and, you know, in seminars and visiting, all of that stuff, you know, I take little nuggets of gold. I think you guys kind of drop.
So Evan, you approach all the different ranges. What is your personal favorite range of combat?
I'd say the range I've had the most training in, I guess, is it's hard. I don't know. Currently I'm enjoying striking weapons range, so knife work primarily, and I'm enjoying grappling, so essentially Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'd say those are the two I'm currently enjoying the most, kind of researching.
And why is that?
I've always had an interest in knives. I think it's a great force multiplier. It's something that's fits my criteria that I listed in the Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must book, the kind of effective, convenient, and accessible. Uh, and then for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I like the fact that you can go hard, you can pressure test. As a smaller guy, I tend to get my butt kicked a lot, and I think that's humbling, and I think that's good for everyone. Like we talked about in the defensive mindset episode. I think people who don't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sometimes buy into their own BS.
Yes.
If I'm only sparring students who I've taught, I'm like, yeah. And like a lot of time, so a lot of times they're bigger. So some people are bigger physically or stronger than them. And you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and sometimes there's like a 25-year-old athletic kid who just like, maybe I still choke him out, but like he spends the entire round like just crushing me because he's faster and stronger. But eventually I loop choke him or something. And then or sometimes I don't. Right? Like I think it's very humbling, and it people think you can access weapons very easily, and you can't if the person is aggressive and they are grappling with you. You don't have time. So I think that even if you're a knife guy, even if you're a pistol guy, even if you're a punching guy, like we saw in the early UFCs, right? Like you need to know grappling because you won't be able to access your tools unless you know the grappling. So
yeah,
I think go for it.
I was gonna say that my current pet peeve is martial artists who do not study jujitsu, and they say like, "Wow, jujitsu is just a sport." I'll just pull up my knife and cut them up, or I'm just gonna sprawl and then drop my elbows on them. And it just kind of cracks me up because the people who say that tend to be like not always, but generally they tend to be a one art type of dude, and they're just totally true believer, brainwashed. They drank the Kool-Aid. They think their style will beat anything, and they may be like full on grandmasters of that style, but because that's all they've ever studied, they haven't studied any other range that are described in your book. They think that their style will beat anything at all ranges, and then like you said, jiu-jitsu is just a great system to learn because you can go 100% and still relatively not get hurt, but it's that pressure testing. It's the understanding that, wow, man, this for me, I'm currently having a problem with these 20-year-olds in my class, and they're all former athletes. They're baseball, wrestlers, football players, and they crush me every time we roll. They might not tap me out, but man, by the end of it, I feel destroyed. I feel like I lost, even though technically I didn't by the rules of the game. And it's humbling, like you said, it's super humbling. Conrad, you're the one with jiu-jitsu black belt, and this you're kind of like an expert in this range. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it reveals a lot. There's so many life lessons to learn from making mistakes. There's a lot of lessons to learn from that. There's also a lot of lessons to learn from the fact that not everything works all the time on everybody, and life is a struggle. There's a lot of that. That being said, though, if the only thing a person does is BJJ, maybe looking at this book, they can go, oh, wow, my punching range it needs work, or my kicking range needs work, or I have no clue how to use a self-defense tool. I have no clue how to use a firearm or something like that. They could look at this book and go, oh, let's start my research in this chapter here. And so I think this book is a terrific way for somebody to look at their art and be brutally honest with yourself. Bruce Lee said one of the hardest things is to be brutally honest with yourself. And so, like what you said, Patrick, some people think, I'm grandmaster in this art, and that's all I need. No, be honest with yourself. You need more than just that, And so maybe your kicking range could be improved, or your knowledge of weapons, or your knowledge of firearms, or your knowledge of mindset or fitness or whatever. If you look at this book, you'll see there's holes. I see holes in my arts and my approach to martial arts as well too, and I'm constantly trying to fill those holes up, and that's just part of the journey. So I think this blueprint, if you will tell you where you're lacking, possibly lacking in your foundation, or maybe give you inspiration and a kickstart or a jump start on something else that you've never tried before. So it's a new world. This is terrific. It's a new world because just 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, back in the 70s, 80s, it wasn't acceptable to go from school to school. It was just like, oh, you're a traitor. You have no loyalty. Teachers would throw that word loyalty and honor. They throw those words around and go, you have no honor. You have no loyalty. It's a new world. It's okay. It's okay to learn English, and it's okay to learn math. And it's okay to learn them at the same time. It's okay to like chocolate ice cream, vanilla ice cream, and strawberry ice cream all at once. It's okay. It's a new world. And so I think a lot of teachers, old school teachers, they're accepting that. It's like, okay, yeah, I know our stuff is stand up. Maybe it's Taekwondo, right? And it's like we've got some solid kicks. We've got some pretty cool kicks. You see it in the UFC, people using spin kicks and stuff. It's awesome. But yeah, our punching range, our trapping range, our grappling range, ground fighting, that all that sucks, And so yeah, let's go ahead. You want to study those? Go for it. And so it's a new world. So it's an exciting world where something like this combative blueprint is long overdue. It's definitely long overdue, and I'm surprised it wasn't written sooner. Something was written earlier than this called the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, but I'll tell you what, this is the modern version of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, it's kind of cryptic, it's kind of poetic, and it's open to interpretation. This just dumps it right in front of you and tells you how it is. So I like this version very much.
I appreciate it, Cameron. That's humbling comparison there. I don't know how I feel about that. But you mentioned even if you're the grandmaster and you think you're amazing at like this, I could disarm anyone with a pistol. Like if you don't know how like a gun works, like right. Just basics like that, which I mentioned a little bit about that in the book. Like, okay, I've taken this gun away, and you're like, now I don't even know I don't know how to render it safe. I don't know if it's dangerous right now, right? So you need some basics in every range, is what I'm saying, right? So, and the other thing, so there's 8 ranges, and there's, like I said, kind of like beginner, intermediate, advanced, and then what I call master, even though I don't really like using that term, but I just couldn't think of another word for like a 4th level. The master level basically takes about 5+ years to achieve whatever I recommend in there. And with 8 ranges, it's not like, oh, well, that's a 40-year project. No, like Conrad was saying, you can do multiple ranges at a time, and a couple of them I kind of clump together. Most arts that teach kicking also teach punching and kind of like closer in fighting. So there's like guidelines, and it's not like you have to take this art, you have to take this art, and you have to take this art. It's like you should do an art that covers this range. Here are some recommendations, or you can find your own way. But like, here's a good starting point, a good suggestion. So.
Right. Yeah. We're not like poo-pooing you if you're doing one art. That's awesome.
I agree. Yeah.
That being said, your one art could possibly get boring, or if you just want to explore different arts, you don't necessarily have to go to a school. You could go on YouTube and or books and whatever as well too. So don't feel like each of these art, you need to go to a Taekwondo school, you need to go to a boxing school, you need to go to a BJJ school, you need to join CrossFit and a temple for mindset. You don't need all that. You can learn a lot of this on your own as well too. I definitely recommend, if you're doing martial arts, join a school, have an anchor, and then explore around with that.
I agree. Yeah, that's I think you nailed it with that piece of advice there. Yeah.
I would be a little bit I would like to add on to that and say that ideally you want to try to find an instructor. The school could just teach one thing, but it would be ideal to find an instructor who has experience in multiple systems. So even though he's only offering one style, he can give you perspective of the other things that he's learned as well, and maybe give you recommendations on where to learn some of those other things. Learning from a single true believer, generally you get a little bit too much of the tribalism and the brainwashing.
Right. And nowadays, there's so many teachers with a lot of experience in different arts. It's rare to find nowadays, not like back in the 70s and 80s. It's kind of rare today to find a teacher who says, I only do Kempo or I only do karate. There are some of those, and I have total respect for them. At the same time, there's so many teachers nowadays. Yeah, I have a black belt in this. I have a black belt in this. I did a few years of this. I did a few years of that. That's very common nowadays.
Yeah. Yep. So Evan, getting towards the end here, what is? I have two questions. The second last one is, what was the hardest thing about writing this book?
It's always editing. I hate editing. It's just I can spew the information onto the page, but like taking it from that like 95 to 99%, and I don't say 100 because I guarantee there's like there's a there that's supposed to be a there in the book or something, something like that. Right. There's always a couple of things that I go back at later and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I messed this up. But the majority of the book is right. The editing is always the hardest part. I'd say other than that, I had trouble figuring out like what I was going to put in the grappling range. Cause I just think learning jujitsu from a book is just like I just don't think it's a thing that can be done well. Unless you are already a very experienced jiu-jitsu person. So I went back and forth between like moves, and then I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And then I was like, I'm not recreating a picture book of jiu-jitsu moves. And then I just settled on like, well, let me just do things I wish I knew as like a new white belt, about like conserving my energy and like maybe not going as hard as I can every single time, or, a couple of like, basic fundamentals of like, here's generally a good position to put your hands, type stuff. So I'd say that, and figuring out where, let's say the third part is figuring out where to kind of cut things short, right? Because some of these chapters, especially the projectile and the knife stuff, I can literally write a 300-page book on each of those chapters.
Right.
So like what do I touch on, and just kind of whet the appetite, so someone reading it will be like, well, I don't really like. They can read it and be like, well, I understand the concept, but I don't understand nuances of this specific topic. And that's what it's kind of meant to do. It's supposed to like whet the appetite to be like, okay, I have holes in my game. I should go learn more about, semi-automatic weapons, because I don't, all I know is how to shoot revolvers, and I don't know anything about shooting in close versus shooting at a distance, right? Because they're different. Like when you're drawing a pistol in close is different from drawing a pistol when someone's 15 feet away. There's different draws. Right. So, yeah.
Very cool. And my last question is, for the person who's considering your book, what should they keep in mind before they read it?
What should they keep in mind before they read
it?
Just approach it with an open mind. I'm not saying that Evan is the best fighter in the world. I'm not saying I'm some sort of grandmaster. I'm not creating my own like system and I'm the grandmaster. Like I'm just sharing information. I generally do believe all martial arts have value. I think they focus on different aspects of it, and I talk about that in the book as well. And I'm not saying I'm the best martial artist. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying I learned a lot by training. I wish I had this book when I started training martial arts or like started in the military, and I would like to share that knowledge with other people. And I think my book is obviously I'm biased because I wrote it, but I think it's like a really good starting point. And you heard what Conrad said, and like I said, he wrote the foreword, and anyone who's read my other book, the Run If You Can, Destroy If You Must book, knows how much information I packed into that. And this one's about 3 times as long. So you'll get your money's worth. I think it's set at $30 right now. I mean, I should charge more than that, but I want people to read it, essentially. So right. I don't want to charge too much because then it'll scare people off. But there's there's literally thousands of dollars worth of content in there because I've I've spent an obscene amount of money between training in person, training online,
Right.
going to seminar, like there's just thousands. It's just, but
Yep.
great place to start for people or anyone who's experienced and wants to see where their game is missing.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I'm super excited to read it. And again, congratulations on finishing it and putting it out there.
Thank you. Yep. And
Yeah.
people want to pick it up, teamstrengthspeed.com would be the best because I get a better cut of the profit if you go through there. But Amazon works just as well. All right. Any final? What does Tiga Tactics have coming up? We need to plug.
Depending on when this episode premieres, we're working on something in June, a pretty cool, amazing event that anybody can join because it's going to be a webinar, but can't quite reveal the details just yet. So just keep that in the back of your head till we do. Next up after that is our San Francisco seminar. It's going to be the knife and pistol defense seminar, happening July 19th to 20th. For those of you who are kind of in the western half of the country, there's a great opportunity to get some really good, safe, effective, fun training that focuses on how to defend yourself when you're empty-handed against a knife or a gun, two very common weapons used on the street by criminals. And San Francisco, it's a world-renowned city, so you can tie that into like a really cool summer vacation. So we highly recommend you check that out. We will be capping the attendance though because the gym is not huge, so you definitely want to sign up as soon as possible and reserve your seat. So and then after that, we've got a couple other cool events coming up, right, Conrad?
Yeah, definitely. Dragon Fest, and also our combative seminar is in New Hampshire.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Dragon Fest, I believe it's the first weekend of August. It's a one-day thing. It's like kind of like a martial arts nerd fantasy.
Very nerdy, very nerdy.
Yeah, it's a huge festival. You'll see a lot of martial arts movie stars, famous martial arts instructors. There'll be like little mini seminars happening, taught by very famous instructors like Don the Dragon Wilson and people of his legendary status. So we're super excited to go as like fanboys, and then New Hampshire, we have a seminar coming up in New Hampshire. It's the Street Survival Seminar, and that's happening August, I believe, 16th and 17th. You'll definitely want to get ready to enroll in that one. That handles basically what the most common attacks happen on the street are generally going to be empty-handed sucker punches, right? It's going to be crime of opportunity. They're going to use the criminals are going to use the weapons that they were born with, which are their hands. They're going to try to hit you when you're not looking or when you're distracted, and then when you fall down, they're going to have a boot party in your head. So in that seminar, we teach you how to prevent all of that, and if you do get taken down, how do you survive?
Awesome. So much good stuff coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's not a sexy seminar, but it's a common skill that everyone should practice, and I can't wait to run through some of these drills.
Awesome. We'll drop a bunch of links down below for people to check the details on those and for people to sign up. And lastly, again, check out my book. Quick shout out to all my instructors. Again, I'm not going to run through everyone, but in the back of the book, I gave a bunch of shout outs to Sensei Joe and Guru Nathan and Sean from First ID Combatives and you guys from Tiga Tactics and my instructors in Florian Martial Arts. So I give a shout out to all those people in the back of the book. I'm not going to list everyone, but thank you all and all my training partners. I tried to give attribution when I like something I was like, oh, well, I specifically remember learning this from here. But I'm sure, some of it's just become part of the knowledge I've accumulated. So I don't really remember where I learned it. So then check that out. Check the links down below. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys and training with you guys at the seminar. If you're coming to a seminar and you listen to the podcast, please let us know at the seminar. That'd be cool to kind of like meet some of the people who are listening in person, especially if we haven't met you before.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to hang out with everyone. I'm kind of quiet. I'm on teamstrengthspeed.com store. I just ordered my book. Can't wait to read it.
Conrad, you're too fast. I don't even have them in stock yet. I literally just put that up.
Oh, come on. I'm going to go on Google and write a negative review now. You're just teasing us.
Conrad read that preemptive strike.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, I put it up there. That's why I haven't started advertising because I don't have the books in hand yet. So,
all right, I can wait. I can wait.
all right, sounds good. All right, we'll see all you guys in the next episode or in person at a seminar.
All right, bye everyone.
Thank you everybody for listening. Appreciate it.